Tá aí, começo? Posso começar? Começo. Well, hello everyone. Good afternoon for those here in our time zone, but also good morning, good evening for those watching us online in other time zones. Um, my name is José Renato. I am a researcher at the University of Bonn in Germany, but originally from Brazil. Also co-founder of LAPIN, the Laboratory of Public Policy and Internet, a non-profit organization based in Brasília, Brazil. And well, we're going to start now our workshop with number 45 on AI ethics by design. And well, our main goal here is mainly to delve into how data governance initiatives can serve as a cornerstone for promoting ethics by design in data-oriented technologies, in particular artificial intelligence. So more specifically, this panel aims to, one, offer an overall understanding of ethics by design and importance of embedding ethical considerations at the inception of technological development. To address the challenges of embedding ethics in AI and other digital systems. And finally, debate multi-stakeholder collaboration and its relevance in shaping ethical norms and standards, particularly in the context of the recent UN resolution A78L49, which underscores the importance of internationally interoperable safeguards for AI systems. We have as policy questions, which will guide the panelists to reflect upon these issues. First one is, how can policymakers effectively promote the concept of ethics by design, ensuring integration of ethical principles into the design of process of AI and digital systems in a way that meaningfully includes multiple stakeholders, especially communities affected by these systems. Second policy question is, what are the primary challenges to embedding ethics in AI and other systems, and how can policymakers, industry, and civil society collectively address them to ensure digital technologies' responsible development and deployment? And finally, what strategies and mechanisms can be implemented to foster these multi-stakeholder collaboration in an ethical way, considering the diverse interests among these communities? Who is going to moderate this session are first Thiago Moraes, who is a joint PhD candidate in law at the University of Brasília and in the Vrije Universiteit Brussels. Hope I pronounced that correctly, but my Dutch is not so good, definitely. And he also works as a specialist in data protection and AI governance at the Brazilian Data Protection Authority, ANPD. Thiago is also co-founder and now counselor of the Laboratory of Public Policy and Internet, LAPIN. The online moderator will be, who is also with us in person here, is Alexandra Krastins, who is a senior lawyer at VLK Advogados. She provides consultancy in privacy and AI governance, also a former member of a former worker at the Brazilian National Data Protection Authority as a project manager, and also co-founder and counselor of the Laboratory of Public Policy and Internet, LAPIN. Well, I hope you all enjoyed the session. Looking forward for the great discussions that I'm sure we're going to have. And I pass the floor to Thiago.
Thank you, Jose. We are really excited to be here today because this is not only a relevant discussion, but also it's an opportunity for us to understand better what's being done in a more hands-on approach when we are discussing this topic of ethics in AI. And that's why the by design part of it is so important. And we brought brilliant speakers today. And I will briefly introduce each one of them as they open the introductory remarks. And for starting, I would like to invite Mr. Ahmad Binder to speak. Ahmad Binder is the Policy Innovation Director at the Digital Cooperation Organization, leading digital policy initiatives to foster collaboration amongst its 16 member states. With over 20 years of experience in public policy and regulation, he has shaped innovative policies driving connectivity and digital economic growth. Ahmad is dedicated to advancing the DCO's mission on promoting digital prosperity for all. So Ahmad, many thanks to come here. yesterday we had the opportunity to see a bit of your framework, of the DCO. It's very interesting, and now we'll have another interesting moment to know how it can relate with the questions that we're provoking here in this session. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Thiago. Thank you very much, everybody, for inviting me and on behalf of the Digital Cooperation Organization to this session. So just a very brief introduction to what DCO is. We are an intergovernmental organization, and we are headquartered in Riyadh with the countries from the Middle East, Africa. We have European countries as our member states, and so far we have South Asian countries. So we started in 2020. Within the last 4 years, we have come up from 5 member states to 16 member states now, and we are governed by the council that has representatives or the ministers for digital economy and ICT from our member states. Our sole agenda is to promote digital prosperity and the growth of digital economy, a responsible growth of digital economy. So this makes us one of a kind organization, a global intergovernmental organization that is not looking at sectors but looking at broadly digital economy. Again, we have our offices here, so we welcome you from Brazil, the whole group of you here to Riyadh. I hope you're enjoying. Okay, so coming to the AI, global AI governance, there are different initiatives that DCO is doing. I will take you through one of those when I explain the framework. But broadly, we have AI development and governance is not a harmonized phenomena across the globe. So we see 2 types of approaches. One of the approaches which is led by the EU or China or some of those countries where we call it a more prescriptive, rules-based, risk-based approaches. And we see the EU AI law or AI Act that has come into place, which categorizes the AI into risk categories, and then very prescriptive rules are set for those categories with a higher risk. And then we see in the US, in Singapore, and a lot of other countries which have taken a so-called pro-innovative approach, where the focus is to let AI take its pace of development and set the rules which are broadly based on principles. So initially we called it as a principles-based approach, but actually all the approaches are based on principles. So even the prescriptive regulatory approaches, they are also based on certain principles. Some call them ethical AI principles, some call them responsible AI governance principles, etc., etc. So also we have seen across the nations different means of approaching AI governance or AI regulation. For example, there are domain-specific approaches. So we have laws, for example, for health sector, for education, for a lot of other sector-specific laws. And those laws are being shaped and developed and advanced to take into consideration the new challenges and opportunities that are posed by AI in them. Then we have framework approaches where a broader AI frameworks are being shaped in the countries that would either reform some of those laws or they would impact the current laws. So there's a broader AI framework. And the third one, as I said, is the specialized AI acts. So the EU AI Act, for example, Australia is working on an AI Act. China has an AI law. So just wanted to give DIA that is specific to AI regulation. Then we have data protection authorities being given the power to regulate AI in some countries. So the institutional mechanisms are being developed and are very important on how AI is governed. Many governments are coming up with their national plans, their strategies on how to look at AI. So amongst our 16 member states, we have like almost more than half of the member states who have already developed their national strategies, looking at different dimensions of AI governance, and they are making their policies ready. Then innovation ecosystems are being encouraged and developed across different countries. Another very important aspect is the diversity of voice and participative environment. So, a lot of the countries in the region have been focusing on rule making or policy making quite unilaterally. And with all the new stakeholders, which are not just local, but they are more in a regional or international perspective. So we see approach towards incorporating the diversity of voices locally and internationally. And then finally international cooperation. So international cooperation comes to number one. I think we have seen some very successful examples of organizations coming up with the AI principles, and that is the starting point of international cooperation. So we see UN, OECD, G7, UNESCO, EU, all of them coming up with what is the baseline for the AI governance or ethical AI governance, and a lot of countries are defining their rules and laws, taking into consideration those considerations or those principles. And then we see some of them, for example, OECD, they pay attention on categorizing AI based on social impacts. The UN advisory body, which has just come up with the recommendations, they are looking at the potential of AI towards global peace, etc. So we at DCO, we have come up with 6 principles that are taken from the best practices, and we call them AI principles. And the ones that you will see on top of this slide that's in front of you. So we have dimensioned accountability and oversight, transparency and explainability, fairness and non-discrimination, privacy, sustainability and environmental impact, and human-centered development and societal benefit. So what we have done is we have looked at, so we have shortlisted the categories of principles, ethical AI principles. Then we have identified the risks that are associated to different use cases of AI. And so that's, you would see in the second row of the framework that you see in front of you. And then we have mapped the human rights, or what are the human rights that those risks then interact with. And with this framework, we have tried to develop a tool for the assessment of AI systems. So before coming to the tool, let me give you a few examples. I mean, you could have many combinations of examples, but if you're looking at the framework, so under the privacy principle, for example, we have a risk of unauthorized collection and processing of sensitive information. And then this risk infringes on the basic human rights of right to privacy. Another example, for example, we have the principle of transparency and explainability, and then this leads to the risk of inability to explain critical decisions to the users, which infringes the right to information. And for all these scenarios, we have created recommendations on how to address those risks. For example, tracking the decisions and their impact that are taken by the AI systems, enhancing the data minimization and security practices. So how we are going to implement that framework is through a tool, and this tool is going to be made available to the AI developers and deployers within the DCO member states, where there's going to be a set of questions that would be answered, and these questions would score the the AI systems on different dimensions and across different and assign different scores, and then furnish different recommendations. We will have this tool soon. Sorry for taking more than 7 minutes if I have, and eating into my colleagues' times, but I think I'll stop there, and I would really look forward to your questions and discussing more about this.
Yeah, thanks a lot. It's a lot of information to process, and it's nice. And we still have time for coming back to that during the main discussion. So I think for now, we'll move on to our next speaker, who is Emna Krishna. I hope I spoke it right. Krishan. So Emna is the Privacy Policy Manager for the Middle East, North Africa, and Turkey region at Meta. With over 15 years of experience as a business lawyer in Tunis, she has also lectured on new technology law and data protection at the University of Paris Dauphine, where she served as a member of the jury for Data Protection Officer certification. Emna is CIPP/SHE certified and has conducted numerous training sessions for professionals on personal data protection. She's a Stanford University Fellow and holds a master's degree in business law along with an executive MBA. So Emna, we are deeply glad for you to be here with us. It'll be very nice to know more about the initiatives that Meta has been developing in this topic, and in particular to the MENA region. So yeah, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Tiago. Actually, as a privacy policy manager, I will be focusing more on privacy than other ethical principles. And actually, I will start with the challenges, describing how we approach privacy at Meta, collaborative work in relation to privacy, but maybe it would be also very useful to describe the challenges in the region, including in the region. So at Meta, since 2019, we have invested more than 5.5 billion USD on rigorous privacy-related programs. And the team that works on privacy-related matters, whether from an engineering perspective, policy perspective, legal, etc., has expanded from a few hundreds to more than 3,000 people. So this is an overview about the team and the investment that Meta is doing about privacy. The challenges now that we are talking about when it comes to AI-related and ethical standards, etc., is that we are talking about a fast-moving technology, a wide-ranging area, and so developing and enabling AI and responsible AI cannot be done by companies separately or individually, or companies cannot work on this alone. Other challenges that we can find in the region is the disparity when it comes to legal frameworks. If we are talking about privacy, some of the countries in the Middle East and North Africa region, for instance, and Turkey, have regulators, have dedicated data protection laws, some of them not. Saudi Arabia has a legal framework when it comes to AI ethical principles, the UAE as well, but others don't have such a legal framework yet. So this disparity also might create another or an additional layer of complexity. And so one of the, Ahmed mentioned earlier the approach based on risk-based approach. Yes, you mentioned the risk-based approach. You mentioned the principle-based approach as well, and these are exactly what we advocate for when it comes to regulating AI. We also advocate for technology-neutral legal frameworks. Build on existing legal frameworks without creating conflict, and to avoid creating conflicts between different legal frameworks, and then most importantly, collaboration between different stakeholders. And the way we approach this collaborative this collaborative work at Meta, when it comes to privacy or ethical standards in general, is that we rely mainly today on open source AI. So some people will ask a question, very simple one, saying normally open sourcing AI would bring more complexities because we are opening the doors to malicious actions, etc., and malicious actors. And so how come that we are enhancing privacy with or through open source AI? Actually, the way we approach this and our vision or perception or work in relation to open source AI is that the more experts are involved, first of all, of course, we are opening the models. When we talk about open source AI, it means that we are opening the models to the AI community that can benefit from this, these AI tools or these AI models, and everyone can use it. Now, the impact of this is that when we open these models, experts can also help us identify, inspect, and mitigate some of the risks. And it becomes a collaborative way of working on these risks and mitigating these risks within the AI community altogether. Of course, all this work is also preceded by a certain work, a privacy review before the launch of products. Pre-deployment risk assessments are done by Meta. Fine-tuning, safety fine-tuning, red teaming is also done ahead of any launch of any product. But in addition to all of these, of course, we have the Privacy Center. We can talk about the privacy-related tools that we have. But if we want to be specific on collaborative work, of course, once the model is launched, and at Connect 2024, which is a developer conference that is organized by Meta annually, we announced the launch of Llama 3.2, one of our open large language models, and through open using an open model that can be used by the AI community, of course. And so just to describe this, one of the tools that we use in open source AI is the purple purple project that we have, which means that before putting in place standards and sharing standards with the user, there is a project that is called a Purple project, which enhances the privacy and safety. Means an open tool where developers and experts can use and to mitigate the existing risks. And once they have tested and mitigated these risks through the Purple project, Purple because it combines both the blue teaming and red teaming, and both are necessary in our opinion. It puts in place standards, and we call this the responsible use guide, and of course accessible to everyone. So this is when it comes to open source AI. To conclude on open source AI, for us it's a tool to enhance, it's through open source AI that we can enhance privacy. Another project that is worth mentioning is the open loop projects that we have at Meta, which is a collaborative feedback way of working. So we gather policymakers with tech companies to share feedback, and when it comes to prototypes of AI regulations. and ethical standards or any issue that has been identified in a specific country. So there are prototypes that are being put in place, gathering policymakers and tech companies, and starting from there, they will test under real conditions, under the real world conditions, these prototypes or these rules, or testing rules, let's call them, and then starting from there, we can issue policy recommendations and learn from the lessons and then also issue policy recommendations. These are the 4 steps that use open loop, and actually last year or the year before we organized an open loop sprint. Not an open loop. Open loop, we accompanied, for instance, the EU AI Act in Europe, testing some of the provisions ahead of their publication officially. But the open loop sprints are a very small version of the open loop projects that we organized at the Dubai Assembly last year, the year before. In the MENAT region, the way we do it, as a privacy policy manager, for instance, I organized expert group roundtables ahead of the launch of any product, even related to AI or not related to AI. We gather our experts. We have a group of experts. We share the specificities of the product, and we get their feedback to improve our products, whether the feedback is legal, in relation to safety, in relation to privacy, in relation to human rights, etc. We take into consideration this feedback. We organize roundtables with policymakers. Recently, we had one in Turkey around AI and the existing data protection rules and whether they are enough to protect within the AI framework or not, what is necessary to do, a discussion on data subject rights as well. We also contribute to all the public submissions in the region, in some of the countries, not all of them, depending on the regulation, the importer or the nature of the regulation. In Saudi Arabia, of course, recently, Saudi Arabia has been very active on that front, completing the legal framework around data protection, putting in place AI ethical standards as well. So they have been very active on this, and we shared our public comments, and that we do believe that it's always a discussion with policymakers. And yeah, looking forward to your questions as well. Sorry if I took more than 7 minutes.
Yeah, it's okay. The only challenge we have is like, because we'll have to do this first round and then try to have some discussions, but it's interesting to see like the many different activities that Meta is being involved to try to bring more collaborative approach. The open source AI is definitely a hot topic, and there are even some sessions here at the IGF that are also discussing this topic. So it's nice to know that there are initiatives like that in Meta as well. Well, without further ado, I think I should move on for our next speaker. Our next speaker is online. It's DataGovernance. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but well, she is a project officer at the Center for Communication Governance at National Law University, Delhi. Her work relates to various aspects of information technology law and policy, including data protection, privacy, and emerging technologies such as AI and blockchain. Her work on the ethical governance and regulation of technology is guided by human rights-based perspectives, democratic values, and constitutional principles. So, Tejasvita, thanks a lot for participating with us, and yeah, well, we're looking forward to know more about your work regarding these topics.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me?
Yes,
just want to confirm before.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
great. All right. So I'm Tejasvita. I'm a project officer at the Center for Communication Governance at NLU Delhi. we do a lot of research work in terms of a lot of governance of emerging technology, and whether the governance is ethical is, I think, a large part of what our work is. So in terms of what I want to talk about today, I know we have three policy questions. Out of these three, what I want to concentrate on is number two, which is on primary challenges to embedding ethics. I think when we talk about embedding ethics into AI or into any other system, what is very important to consider what ethics even means, in the sense that ethics, in what it is a very subjective concept. What ethics might mean to me might be very different to what it means to somebody else. And that is something we can already see in a lot of existing AI principles, ethical principles, or guiding documents, where in one you can see that they might consider transparency to be a principle, which will be a recurring principle across documents, but privacy may not necessarily be one, which means that there'll be a varying level of what these ethical principles might be implementing. So what this means for us is that when you're implementing ethics, there's a good chance that not everybody is applying it in the same way, or even the principles might be different. So in terms of what I mean when I say that people may not implement it in the same way is, I will talk about fairness in AI. When we look at fairness in AI, fairness as a concept is different when you look at it in, let's say, the United States versus what you would consider to be fairness as an ethical principle in India, right? In India, there'll be various factors such as caste, religion, which will play very, very high value roles when you're determining fairness. Meanwhile, in the US, these factors may look like race. So I specifically mean this in terms of AI bias when you're looking at discrimination and bias in AI. So with that in mind, the first challenge when we're looking at embedding ethics is that ethics is different for everyone. And even the principles, even though they may be similar, there'll be a lot of varying factors or differences in how these ethical principles even are understood. So with that in mind, we need to solve this issue, and how do we deal with that is when we look at that as the answer, I will get to the point number three, which is the strategies and mechanisms what strategies and mechanisms can be implemented, right? So one way that we solve this problem is by ensuring that there is collaboration between multiple stakeholders, in the sense that we very often, as civil society and policymakers, we have certain ideas of what ethics means. But do the developers and designers of these systems understand what this even means? Whether they have the ability or not to implement ethics by design into these systems is a very big question. The main way that we can solve this issue is by first identifying what these ethical principles are, what it means for each differing context. I'm of the belief that we cannot define ethics as a larger concept. We must understand that depending on the system, depending on the regional societal context, there will always be differences in terms of what ethics by design is going to look like. And there must always be differences, because there cannot be a one size fit all standard application of ethics by design, because not everybody agrees on what ethics means. So first we determine what ethics even means, what these principles can be, whether, for example, we want to ensure that whether we want to ensure that privacy is a part of the ethical principles, for example. And then we get into the question of what these factors are that will be included within these ethical principles. Like I said, if it's for fairness, are we looking at fairness in the sense of non-discrimination, inclusivity? What are these factors that fall within this is very important to have like one level of understanding on. And then we get into understanding how developers and designers can actually implement this in their systems, whether it's by ensuring that their data is clean before they start working, to ensure that there's no bias that comes into the data inherently. So I think that the main way that we ensure ethics by design is by ensuring that there's good collaboration between stakeholders. This collaboration can perhaps can be in the form of a coalition. Like, for example, in India, what we have right now is we have a coalition on responsible evolution of AI, where there's a lot of stakeholders. Some of them are developers, some of them are big tech. There's also civil society participation. And all of us, we talk about number one, what the difficulties are in terms of AI and the responsible evolution of it. And then we also discuss how we solve this. So the only way that we can do this is by actually creating a mechanism where there's actual collaboration between all of these different stakeholders, where we discuss and identify how we design it. So this is my point predominantly in terms of how you can implement ethics by design. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Jasta. And quite interesting to know about these coalitions that are trying to engage different stakeholders to tackle issues such as fairness in AI. I think this is part of the puzzle that we have to solve here. When we're discussing about what we really means, right, on ethics by design and uh, where we'll get from here is definitely a challenge that we have to consider these many different perspectives. And one of the challenges is how to make these collaborations actually to work and come into results. So thanks for giving a glimpse on that. Hopefully we can have some time to go back a bit, but we'll move now for our last but not least speaker, who is Rosanna Fani from UNESCO. So Rosanna is a program specialist in the ethics of AI unit at UNESCO, part of the bioethics and ethics of science and technology team, focusing on technology governance and ethics. She supports the global implementation of UNESCO's recommendation on the ethics of AI, the run process, and assists countries in shaping ethical AI policies. Previously, she coordinated AI policy projects at CIPS and contributed to research at the Brookings Institution, the European Parliament Research Service, and NUCLEA. Rosanna holds expertise in international AI governance and policy analysis. So thanks a lot for being here with us, Rosanna, and we are looking forward to know more about your work in the topic.
Thank you very much, Thiago, and also thanks for all my fellow panelists. I think a lot of things have already been mentioned that I maybe would have been repeating, so I hope I will not do that, but instead offer some sort of, first maybe putting together the remarks that we've heard together today, and also offering some perspectives for the discussion. And I will outline that based on, of course, the work that we do at UNESCO to implement ethics of AI around the world. And first, thanks also for organizing this session, because I think it's really, really important to always think, when we think about new technologies and especially artificial intelligence, the ethics, because the ethics is what makes us human, what makes us come together, what makes us sit together in the room and discuss and interact and exchange different perspectives. So for us at UNESCO, ethics is not something philosophical, and it's also not something that is built in as an afterthought, so to say, when we look at AI. But it means really from the first moment to respect human rights and human dignity and fundamental freedoms, and to put people and societies at the center of the technology. So we really believe that it should not be about controlling the technology, but rather steering the development in a way that serves our goals for humankind, because we believe that the technology conversation, especially the conversation is about AI, is in the end a societal one, not a technological one. And this means that we must scale our governance and our understanding of the technologies in a way that matches the growth of the industry and the growth of the technology itself as it develops into our societies in every aspect. I mean, I don't have to, I think, mention the examples of where we see AI already happening today, and also the risks that arise with it. And there was one point in the discussion when it came to the AI regulation. It was a bit, let's say, let's think back a few years when we didn't yet have the AI Act in place, when we didn't yet have the discussion about the US framework, and also not other standards. There was this moment, if you remember, that a lot of governments were like, oh, but we see the technology is developing so fast, we can't really do anything about it. We don't really know how to steer it, and we need to leave the market solve the problems on its own. Well, that was the moment when UNESCO started to implement its work on the recommendation on the ethics of AI. So UNESCO actually has been working on ethical and governance consideration of science and technology for several decades. Previously, we have promoted rigorous analysis and multidisciplinary and inclusive debate regarding the development and implication of emerging technologies with our scientific committees that we have. And this started off actually as a debate about ethics and the human genome editing. And since then, we have at UNESCO constantly reflected on the ethical challenges of emerging technologies. And this work eventually accumulated in the observation of member states, seeing that there is actually a lot of ethical risks when it comes to the development and application of artificial intelligence. And this is what has led us to work on the recommendation on the ethics of AI. The recommendation on the ethics of AI is, if you think again and now today, is actually quite, I think, a fascinating instrument because it is approved by all 194 member states. And it has a lot of ethical principles, values, and policy action areas that everybody agreed to. So maybe already reacting to my previous speaker, fellow panelist, that it is there is actually a global standard I can maybe just very quickly list the values. We have the respect, promotion, and protection of fundamental rights and human rights. Then we have the environment and ecosystem flourishing, which is also something that is really important when you look at ethics, to also look at the environment. And we have ensuring diversity and inclusiveness and peaceful, just, and interconnected societies. And then we have 10 principles, how these are translated into practice. These values, for example, fairness and discrimination, safety, right to privacy, of course, human oversight, transparency, responsibility. You can all read them up online. I will not outline them for the sake of time. And this recommendation that was adopted in 2021 is actually now being implemented in over 60 member states already around the world and counting. What does that mean, implementing the recommendation? It means implementing the recommendation through a very specific tool. It's the readiness assessment methodology. I have only the French version, but here it is. The readiness assessment methodology is actually ethics by design for member states' AI governance frameworks. So what does it mean? It means that when member states work on the AI governance strategies or before they start working on them, we offer them this tool. It's basically a long questionnaire that gives member states a 365-degree vision of how their AI ecosystem looks like at home. This has 5 dimensions, so societal and cultural, regulatory, infrastructural, and other dimensions. And through this tool, we really ensure that member states know where they stand and how they can improve their governance structures to ensure that ethics is really at the center of what they do when they work on AI policy and governance. We also have another tool, and I want to quickly spend a minute or so on explaining this tool as well. It's the ethical impact assessments. While the readiness assessment is something that is on a macro level and really looks at the whole governance framework, the ethical impact assessment looks at one specific algorithm and looks at how and to what extent this specific algorithm complies with the recommendation and the principles outlined in the recommendation. That's really important when we look at AI systems used in the public sector. For example, when we see AI systems used for welfare allocation or for where children go to school, or when we look at AI used in the healthcare context. So it is really crucially important that these AI systems are designed in an ethical manner. And the ethical impact assessment does exactly that. It analyzes the systems against the recommendation, and this is done in the entire life cycle. So looking at the governance, for example, the multi-stakeholder governance, how has the tool been designed, which entities have been involved. Then it looks at the negative impacts and the positive impacts, and that's also something that I think is really important to emphasize when you look at ethics by design. It's not just about mitigating the risks, but also looking at the opportunities that exist in the use of AI systems. And there's also always the contextualization of weighing of course, the negatives against the positives. So that's also something that the ethical impact assessment looks at. I will just very briefly, because I think I'm almost also over time. I will very briefly also mention that we work with the private sector. Okay, so now fixed. We work with the private sector as well because we think that when it comes to AI governance, nobody can do it alone, and the private sector is a key entity in ensuring that AI systems are being designed and implemented in an ethical manner. So we have been teaming up with the Thomson Reuters Foundation to launch a voluntary survey for business leaders and companies to map how AI is being used across their operations, products, and services. And this tool is actually not yet live. It's going to be launched in June, but now we have already launched the initiative, and we will the questionnaire will be available in summer next year. And the idea really is for businesses to conduct a mapping of their AI governance models and also assess, for example, where AI is already having an impact, for example, on the diversity and inclusion aspect or human oversight, or the environmental impact assessment is also featured there. And by offering this tool to the private sector, we really want to support the sector to ensure that their governance mechanisms are becoming more ethical, that they can also disclose this to their investors, their shareholders, but also to the public, and really ensure that ethics is at the center of their operations. And last but not least, another aspect that we have heard a lot of times today is multi-stakeholderism. And especially we at UNESCO see that civil society is always a really critical part of the discussion about ethics of AI and governance, but it's most often civil society is not properly, I think, sitting at the table when it comes to discussions. So we at UNESCO want to change that. We have been already through the last year working on mapping all the different civil society organizations that are working on ethics of AI and governance of AI. And we're bringing them all together also the next year at the AI Action Summit in Paris first, and then at the Global Forum on the Ethics of AI. That's UNESCO's flagship conference on ethics and AI governance. And we will be bringing this global network of civil society organizations for the first time together at these both events. And we invite all civil society organizations that would like to join us as well to ensure that we bring these voices effectively the major AI governance processes that are ongoing right now. And with that, I will close. I really look forward to the discussion. I have many more points to say, but yeah, thanks a lot. And over to you, back to you, Tiago, or to our next moderator.
Thank you, Rosanna, for your speech. We're going to the second part of our panel, but first I would like to engage our audience online and on site. So does anyone have any questions, comments, observations of any kind? Please reach out the standing mic. Okay, so I'm gonna make some questions to our speakers. You can answer as you like. So how are you involving stakeholders from civil society and academia in the initiatives you have mentioned?
I spoke last, so maybe I'll pass the floor to
Well, I'll be quick. So as Rosanna said, we as an intergovernmental organization is all about collaboration and discussion. We have so first of all, we have member states who we hold and conduct the discussions and workshop with. We have a very big network, a growing network, not very big, so it's of observers, and all the initiatives that we propose, we try to seek the inputs from them and improve and shape the dialogue. And we want to then become position ourselves as a collective voice and advocate for the best practices on that behalf. So Yeah, this is from an intergovernmental organization perspective. Would you want to take it?
Only this one. Okay. We have an initiative at Meta. So actually, we partner with it's a non-profit community that has been created called Partnership on AI, and it's a partnership with academics and civil society, industry, and media as well, creating solutions so that AI advances positive outcomes for people and society. And out of this initiative, specific recommendations are provided under what we call synthetic media framework, recommendations on how to develop, create, and share content generated or modified by AI in a responsible way. So this is one of the initiatives that Meta collaborate. Actually, we collaborate whether with academia, but also with CSOs. We have other projects, Coalition for Content Provenance and Authenticity, with the publication of what we call content credentials about how and when digital content was created or modified. This is called C2PA. And this is another kind of coalition that we have, not necessarily with academia or CSOs or limited to these actors. And another partnership is the AI Alliance that was established with IBM. And this gathers creators, developers, and adopters to build, enable, and advocate for open source AI.
Tejaswita, you want to join us?
Yes. I would say, as somebody who represents more civil society and academia, I can give more of the input on how I think we get involved in these conversations. So, like I said before, it's predominantly in a lot of these coalitions or other groups. There's a lot of representation predominantly by industry, but I do think very often academia and civil society organizations are invited to get opinions in, to listen and understand more about what our beliefs are. But I do believe that very often when this is done, it ends up being a little bit of a minority perspective, and it feels like you're not necessarily always taken very seriously because um it almost feels like it's a little bit like advocacy where you know that you're speaking about things that may not necessarily be what other people want to do. So I think even though academia and civil society representation exists, I don't think it's being done in a way that is actually useful because it's almost like it's a tokenization of representation. So I will be asked to do something or attend an event representing civil society, academia, and I will do it. But I feel like at the end of the conversation, I am there solely to mark for like a tick box, being like, okay, we have had representation, we've heard from them, but ultimately what we want to do is what we believe should be done. So I think it's more of a criticism from my end on this part. That being said, I unfortunately have another clashing event, so I will not be able to stay for this event any further. I really apologize. It's been a great, I really loved listening to everyone. I'm really grateful for this opportunity and to have been part of this panel with all of these other excellent panelists and even the moderators. All of you, thank you very much. I will be leaving now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tejaswita, for your participation.
I just want to add one quick thing which skipped my head. So we have a mechanism called Digital Space Accelerator Program, where we hold global roundtables on different digital economy issues. So this AI tool that we are developing, we actually have been. So we gather on the sidelines of big events. We gather the expert stakeholders, like we did yesterday. And we seek their inputs while we are shaping and designing our product. So this tool, so we went to Singapore, for example, we went to Riyadh and a couple of other places. We gathered the experts, and this is a mechanism not just for the AI, but this is what it's a holistic program for DCO. Please have a look at it on our website and feel free to contribute or join as well. So this Digital Space Accelerator program is how we collect, we involve all the stakeholders into our initiatives. Thank you.
Yes, I will also add a couple of points, and maybe directly picking up by panelist that has unfortunately now left us. It's very much true that we also observe that there is this tick box exercise, especially when it comes to civil society involvement in global governance processes on AI. And that's exactly why we want to set up this, or are setting up the global network of civil society organizations. And maybe to give a bit more context, we will launch this in the context of the summit hosted by France, which is happening in February next year. This is, as many of you know, a governmental led summit. The first one having been taken place in the UK as the Safety Summit, known as the Safety Summit, and then followed by the second one hosted by the Republic of Korea. And for us, it's really crucial that we indeed do not do it again as a tick box exercise, but that we bring civil society in the discussions and leverage their voices during the ministerial discussions as well. So this is something that also the organizers have actually already announced. So if you go to the AI Action Summit website, you will see that civil society will actually be a high priority. And our idea is really to link the dots and to make this network, so to say, permanent, to then also offer it as a consultative body, so to say, for future AI Action Summits or for other major governance processes on AI. And this is something that, yeah, it's really at the heart of our endeavor, and we really thank also the cooperation with the Patrick McGovern Foundation, which funds this initiative, for their support in this project. The other part that I quickly wanted to mention is the work with academics. This is also for us a really crucial part of our work, and especially people from academia support us in implementing the recommendation through the readiness assessment methodology that I mentioned beforehand, as a 360-degree scanning tool for governments. And we bring together these experts. So imagine we have now we are conducting the readiness assessments in over 60 countries. So that means we have already 60 experts engaged in each country, and every expert brings something that is a bit unique from the country to the discussions, and we assemble these experts in a network that we call AI Ethics Experts Without Borders. So this AI Ethics Experts Without Borders network is really there to unite the knowledge that we find in governments, on country level, and maybe even on regional or local level, on ethical governance of AI, and brings this, so to say, together at UNESCO. And what is really special about it is that then experts can exchange, hey, what was the experience on let's say maybe AI used in healthcare, or AI used in another sector, or maybe there was an issue with the supervision of AI. So the idea is really to bring this expertise together and leverage also the knowledge of local experts. And what I want to also emphasize, and this also links to the civil society discussion, that's really important. It's also very often the same, let's say, theme or the same issue happens with civil society as it happens with countries from the global south, so that it is really more of a tick box exercise. Oh, we have someone from Africa here, but actually the grand majority of the countries that do AI governance are mainly, developed economies. So for us, this is very much also linked to our work, that we bring in these voices from the global south, and not to bring them in as let's say a tick box exercise, but to really leverage their voices. And that's also why we are already working with out of these 20, we have out of 60 countries, 22 from Africa, and even more from small island developing states. And for us, it's really important to bring in these actors that are normally underrepresented. And we really hope to be continuing the work with as far as the IGF, but also in many other contexts as well.
Thank you. We're going to ask you to bring us your final remarks, but as part of this final remarks, if you could bring us some last insights about one question. So what is the feedback you have received from stakeholders participating in those collaborative approaches? and what were the challenges they shared in doing those collaborative work. What were the key takeaways? And thank you very much for your participation.
Well, okay. I think my last or concluding thoughts are actually connected to this question. So we have engaged with stakeholders across our DCO member states and the governments as well as the civil society. What we have noticed that across our membership, and that's a sample because we are very diverse to the global examples as well. There are varying levels of AI readiness across the member states. So while some member states or some countries are struggling with the basic infrastructure, the other ones are really, really at the forefront of how to shape AI governance. There are diverse definitions, diverse approaches to the governance. So the uniting factor, as Rosanna said, are the principles which have been very widely adopted because they are not controversial. But how to action those principles has been quite diverse. Some countries are really, really looking at but the principles are common. So there's a huge potential for engagement, for harmonization, for synchronization of the policies, because the AI or all the emerging technologies, the regulations are not restricted to the countries themselves. So they're global actors. The borders do not define technologies, etc. I think it's really, really important now that when we talk about multi-stakeholderism or multilateralism, to actually action it, to have those voices heard, to have these global forums, these global discussions, and then the global rule making or rule setting bodies to be more active, and push the right set of rules, etc., for the nations to adopt. And I think the dialogue is very important that we are having here, and we have across these forums. Thank you.
Yeah, I would highlight one of the I cannot provide a detailed, of course, feedback, because when we work, for instance, with experts, the experts provide their feedback depending on the product that we are asking them to provide feedback on. So, but like in a very, very general and overview of the comments that we receive, sometimes we feel that there is some very varying level of understanding of what AI is, of the risks that are on the table, being put on the table. Are we talking about existential risks in general, or are we trying to like have a more specific and more scoped approach, identifying a specific risk and trying to target this specific risk and mitigate it properly and in a very specific way? I think, and sometimes we face also some misconceptions from the experts, because if we are talking with experts who are from the who have a human rights approach or based approach, then maybe in terms of privacy or when it comes to AI specific specificities, sometimes there are some misconceptions. So the educational work is absolutely indispensable, and hence some of the privacy tools that we put in place, for instance, the system cards when it comes to AI, to explain to the users, the user who does not have a knowledge. And if a user does not understand the AI model, how it works and why it works and behaves this way, it's very difficult to get the trust from this user. And this is why, for instance, the system cards that we put in place explain, let's say, the ranking system in our ads, how our ads are ranked, how are the users, and it comes to the ads, are ranked, the ranking systems, the privacy center, some other educational tools as well. It's very important to educate, to do this education work.
Yes, I will make it really, really short. Implementation. We hear from member states that they want to operationalize the principles. They want to do something with AI. They want to use AI, but at the same, they want to not get it wrong. They don't want to use it in an unethical manner. They want to have the benefits for everyone, for their citizens, for their businesses. And I think implementation of the recommendation, but also implementation of other tools that we have heard today here from other stakeholders, my fellow panelists. Also, we have the implementation of the Global Digital Compact. So I think now the focus really needs to shift from the principles, from the kind of agreement consensus that we have found. Yes, we need ethics. Yes, we need ethics by design. Yes, we need also a global governance for AI. But yes, how do we do it, and how do we move from the principles to the action? And I think there's still a lot of necessity to build capacities in governments, to build capacities in public administration, but also in the private sector, also in civil society, to really, be actionable, be operational, and at the same time use AI for, of course, the benefit of the citizens, but also be aware of the risks and mitigate the ethical challenges that we have.
Thanks a lot, and it was amazing having this discussion. And I think Rosanna just got this main question now. Now that we have a consensus, where do we go from here, right? How do we do it? And we're looking forward to these initiatives that are being developed by different organizations, the AI Action Forum that's coming, and many others that we have been sharing here in the Internet Governance Forum. So thanks everyone. Thanks our speakers to being here, the audience for being and for the whole discussion. And yeah, looking forward to what's coming.